First, I'd like to say my name is Tracy Carluccio, and I'm Deputy Director of Delaware Riverkeeper Network. And we're hosting this webinar tonight in order to address Pennsylvania's proposed maximum contaminant levels for PFAS compounds. So the name of our webinar is Get the Toxins Out of Our Drinking Water. And we'll be looking at what the proposed standards are, what the implementation of those standards would be, and how the public can speak up to make sure that these compounds are removed from our water. We also have suggestions about how to improve these regulations. We have special guests tonight, Joanne Stanton and Grosse. They co-founded Buxmont Coalition for Safer Water, and they're going to be speaking about midway through. So I'm going to put into the chat as we go along a bunch of resources, but also the agenda. So we're going to start by going through some slides here, and then both Joanne and Hope are going to be speaking, and then we're going to go through some slides that explain a little more what the regulations actually say and how we want them to be improved. Then we're going to have an opportunity for questions and answers after that. We also will be giving out information about how you can participate in the public input process, including the hearings that are going to be held next week, which you must sign up for by Friday, this Friday at 5 p.m. And we'll have the links and we'll be putting them into the chat too. So I'm going to go ahead and get started because we're 4 minutes after. So first of all, PFAS, well, what are they? Well, some of you probably know, but these are substances that are compounds with at least one totally fluorinated carbon atom. Now, we're not going to get too sciencey and technical tonight. We really want to try to make this as friendly as possible, but that's about the most technical thing you're going to see here in terms of explaining what they are. What that bond does is it makes an extremely strong bond. And as a result of that, they don't break down in the environment, and they also build up in our bodies. PFOA and PFOS are the most commonly found in Pennsylvania. They know that because of the sampling that has been done. We need a lot more sampling, but so far, the sampling that has been done shows that those are the two most prevalently found. These are a class of chemicals, and they were used for decades in manufacturing, industrial applications such as plastics on top of wire. They were used in aqueous film-forming foam, which is used in firefighting at military facilities, and you'll hear a little bit more about that later. And also a multitude of consumer products, even today. They're throughout our environment. As a matter of fact, all of us have a certain amount of PFAS in our blood. Even polar bears have, in the Antarctic, have been found to have PFAS in their blood. So they call them forever chemicals because they do not biodegrade. They don't break down, and they are bioaccumulative. They accumulate in our bodies and in natural systems. So how do they threaten your health? Well, they build up in the body, as I said, and they concentrate in our blood, liver, kidneys, other organs, depending on the particular PFAS compound. And scientists estimate, to give you an idea, the levels in one's blood is about 105 times the amount in your water. So that's how much it accumulates from drinking it. And really minuscule doses of PFAS build up in the human body through that drinking water exposure and other sorts of exposure like food or through consumer products. And they stay there for years. They have what's called a long half-life. Very difficult for the body to excrete. They concentrate in blood serum to higher levels than are known to have adverse health effects. So what that means is that if you have it built up in your blood, you have an increased risk of developing diseases that are linked to these toxic chemicals. So what are the health threats? Well, they have done many studies, and it's correlated with diseases by examining links between human exposure and the incidence of disease. That's one way. You usually don't do that in in health studies, but there was a population exposed for many years, decades in West Virginia. So they actually studied people and were able to do that type of a correlation. And then also in animal studies. So the first one we're going to look at is PFOA, and it's linked to kidney cancer, testicular cancer, thyroid disease, high cholesterol, pregnancy-induced hypertension, ulcerative colitis, also low infant birth weight, impacts on the immune system so it doesn't work like it should, and also decreased vaccine response. There are developmental impacts to the infant and then even to the fetus because it's passed right through the placenta to the fetus when a mother is pregnant. It's also passed through breastfeeding. Now, and I have some links here that you can look up, but we are going to be sending all of these links in a follow-up email with the link to the recording. PFOS, the health effects are hepatic, endocrine, developmental, immune system toxicity, hepatocellular, and thyroid tumors. And also developmental effects and delays were for the fetus and infants in studies that have been done. Again, reduced antibody response to vaccines. They were actually called an immune hazard by the National Institutes of Health. So how do they get into the environment? Well, they're discharged directly, and that's through their use in manufacturing and different industrial applications. They get into water, groundwater, surface water. They move through the air, and they then settle into the environment. People breathe it in, but also mainly people take it in through their drinking water, which is the major exposure route, but also through food, fish, and we're going to talk a little bit about that a little later on. Firefighting, locations such as Department of Defense installations and airports, where the foam was used in training and also in firefighting. And there are many all across the Commonwealth. Very, very common that these facilities were used, if not during fighting a fire, in training on a regular basis. And you'll hear a little bit more about that too. Also, they're spread inadvertently by sewage and industrial wastewater treatment plants. It passes right through. It's not removed from those treatment plants. So all the sewage that is brought in, all the industrial waste that is brought in passes right through into the water. Also landfills and the leachate from landfills also pass this PFAS right through. The application of sewage sludge, or what they euphemistically call biosolids on farms and parkland, that spreads it around. It's been an absolute nightmare how biosolids have spread sewage sludge through sewage sludge, PFAS compounds to places far away from the original source of contamination. Also, the degradation of consumer products contributes. So it was recently also found in hydraulic fracturing or fracking fluids. There's a study out on that shows that unbeknownst to the public, that they were actually used in fracking fluids and still are today. Research has been done to find out that it's actually been used in Pennsylvania in fracking fluids. And those areas largely have not been sampled by the state in the research that they've been doing to get ready for this rulemaking. It's also highly mobile in water. So it moves through the ground and surface water, it travels by air, and it's taken up by animals, by fish, and we have some links to some fish consumption advisories related to fish, crops, and basically gets into the food chain. So the rulemaking, what does it say? Well, they put forward a maximum contaminant level. That's the level you cannot go over in your water. And that maximum contaminant level is 14 parts per trillion, or PPT, for PFOA. And they've proposed 18 parts per trillion for PFOS. Now, what do we need? What we need is the greatest protection from exposure to PFAS compounds that can be attained. The major exposure route for PFAS is through our drinking water. We do get it from other places too, which is a problem. But if you're getting it out of your tap water, it's hard to escape, particularly if you don't even know it's there and you're not testing for it. So MCLs in our opinion, must be adopted by DEP to mandate their removal from our drinking water. So I'm quickly going to show this because we're going to show it a little later too. How do you get involved? Well, there are virtual hearings. You don't actually have to go to a hearing. You can just call in, makes it a little bit easier. You can join by your computer and by your phone. But you have to sign up by this coming Friday, that's March 18th by 5 p.m. if you want to speak on March 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, and 25th. Those are the times and dates there. I'm going to put that into the chat in a minute. It's really important for us to try to have some people speaking every day in order to support the concept that we have to get this out of our water. So you have to go to the EQB's, the Environmental Quality Board's webpage. That's the link there, but we're going to put that in the chat. And there are written comments that can be submitted as well. The comment period for written comments is open now, and it's open through April 27th. And you can do that by email or by going on to the DEP website and using their e-comment system. Okay, so that's the rundown on PFAS. We're going to have a time for questions and answers where the three of us will try to answer your questions as best we can or refer you where to get more information. But right now, I'd like to introduce both Joanne Stanton and Hope Grosse. They're co-founders of Buxmont Coalition for Safer Water, and they've been involved in Bucks and Montgomery counties and fighting to get the attention needed to the terrible contamination that has been done there by the 3 military bases. And I'm going to let them talk a little bit, from their own point of view at this point in time, and we'll come back and you can ask them questions at the end. But right now, I really want to turn it over first to Joanne Stanton, and then she's going to pass it on to Hope Grosse. So Joanne, take it away.
Hi, everyone. I'm so sorry. I'm trying to signal to get my dogs out of the room. They're very loud snorers. I just wanted to share my personal story so you guys can really get an idea of how PFAS really affects people and affects our communities. My PFAS story started when I was a young mom. I was very naive. I thought if a product was on a store shelf, it was tested, it was proven safe. I thought if water came out of my kitchen faucet, it was safe. We have over 40,000 chemicals in consumer use, and less than 10% of them have ever been tested for human health effects. And that makes being a mom really difficult. We shouldn't have to read labels to find out if something is safe for our kids. And unfortunately, untested and unregulated chemicals like PFAS can easily make their way into our drinking water. And as a matter of fact, we only have to test and remediate for about 90 different drinking water contaminants under our current drinking water laws. And that's it. That's scary. That's when I learned how important our water regulations are in safeguarding our health, and really especially the health of our children, because they're much more vulnerable. I grew up in Warminster, Bucks County, about 2 miles from 2 separate military bases, and they both used AFFF, the firefighting foam that Tracy referred to that contains toxic PFAS. 7 years ago, my hometown was devastated to discover that our drinking water had been highly contaminated by PFAS for close to 50 years, with some of the highest levels of PFAS pollution ever detected in public drinking water wells. So naturally, I started to read everything I could get my hands on about PFAS. And when I began researching the health effects, I learned that some of these chemicals could cross the placenta and affect a developing fetus. Animal studies showed that PFAS caused tumors and cancer, neurodevelopmental problems, and even second-generation health effects. Now, the magnitude of what I was uncovering, suddenly it hit me like a ton of bricks, and my mind raced back to an earlier time when my oldest son was diagnosed with a cancerous brain tumor at age 6. Back then, after my son's surgery, epidemiologists came into our hospital room, and they began, pummeling my husband and I with really pointed questions. Where do you live? Where was your early pregnancy? Have you or your husband ever worked with chemicals or pesticides? Here they told us they found embryonic tissue like in the very center of my son's tumor. That meant that it started to form during my pregnancy. That was the first time I ever really thought about environmental impacts to my health. Now there's 3 of us who grew up together in Warminster on the same street within a few houses of each other. And all 3 of us had children with brain tumors. All of our children's tumors were cancerous, and they all had embryonic tissue at the core. Now, at the time, we knew nothing about PFAS when our children were diagnosed, but our doctors did immediately question our environmental exposures to chemicals. And we eventually learned that we all drank PFAS contaminated water throughout our entire childhood, and we drank it during our pregnancies. As a mother, you can only imagine, it was gut-wrenching for me to eventually be told that my PFAS exposure might have actually caused my child's cancer. But naturally, what truly sickened me probably worse was that the DOD and the chemical manufacturers and even the EPA had known just how poisonous PFAS was, and they chose to do nothing, to be silent, to watch people get sick in surrounding communities. In some cases, even die without warning us. In my town where I grew up, we have 3-year-olds now with kidney cancer. They're never going to get a chance to do something as simple as ride a bike or possibly put their first tooth under their pillow. There are new moms who don't feel they can safely breastfeed their babies because of the high levels of PFAS that has been found in their breast milk. Now, it's been 8 years since we learned about PFAS at our 2 military sites, yet these chemicals, they're still polluting our public waterways. Within the past couple of years, the groundwater levels at the base have measured over 4,000 times what the EPA says has set for a health advisory for drinking water. And there's PFAS discharges coming off bases through stormwater permits that currently far exceed the limits that were actually set in their discharge permits. They're being violated. How can this be? Well, it's because we have no regulations for PFAS. Okay, it's the EPA's job to regulate chemicals, and it's their job to set safe drinking water standards. So this proposed MCL, while we're all here tonight, for PFAS has the power to really change the course of history in our state. With this comment period, we have the opportunity to speak up, ensure that, I can ensure that my community and all communities across the state have safer drinking water. Why should our neighbors in New Jersey, where they have a drinking water standard for PFAS, why should they have safer drinking water than we do here in Pennsylvania? My story is not unique. You'll hear from Hope, my co-founder, next. There are hundreds of personal stories like mine across my community, across the whole state. And on a personal note, as we all know, cancer and other health problems, it goes far beyond a diagnosis. It's financial, it's emotional. My son was one of the lucky ones. He survived his cancer, but it didn't come without a price. As a mother, watching my bright and vibrant child slowly fade into a disabled adult has been one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. Today, he's in his 30s. He still lives at home with us. He can't drive. He probably won't marry, have children, or experience many of the joys in life we had dreamed of for him. And I now realize that stronger drinking water regulations that govern toxic chemicals like PFAS could have prevented needless suffering from my family and many, many other families in my community. It might be too late for my son with this proposed rulemaking for PFAS, but it's not too late for others. We really can't afford to wait another minute. And as a mom, I implore you all to take part in this public comment period. You don't need to be an expert. You just need to speak from the heart, keep it simple, keep it short. Let's hold PADEP's feet to the fire, and let's set a strong drinking water regulation for PFAS. That's it. Just wanted to share my story. And next, I'm going to introduce Hope Grosse.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hope Grosse, and Joanne gave you a lot of info about our bases and about her life. I'm also been impacted by this PFAS and lots of other chemicals. In 1965, I moved into Warminster, and through the years, we drank the water, brushed our teeth in the water. We had well water. So I had lost my dad when he turned 52. And 3 months after that, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. A neighbor's father died 6 months before that of cancer. My sister has tons of multiple autoimmune diseases, suffers aneurysms in her stomach and her back and her neck at 45 years old. We're not alone. There's so many of us have been affected by the drinking water and the water that comes out of your spigot, which, like Joanne said, as a mom or as even anybody, as a teenager, any age, you think, you trust your government that you're going to be getting clean water and you're going to drink clean water. And again, I lived at Warminster for 25 years, right across the street from the Navy base. It was about 25 foot from the Navy base, and they had firefighting training center there. And as a child, all my siblings and neighbors, we would watch the fires a couple times a week. And, it would be not only PFAS, but they would light these metal planes on fire with gas, which is benzene. So you have heavy metal, benzene, then they're blowing it out with PFAS and who knows what else. So I believe over the years, we've done some research and there's over 80 different chemicals that the Department of Defense has dumped into our private and public wells in my town and in many towns. Our town alone, it's over 85,000 people that I believe are poisoned by all those toxins. And like me, many residents have reached out to Joanne and I through Buxmont Coalition, through our website, and expressed their need for answers to health questions and wanting to know if blood testing was available and wanted to share their stories with us. So I wanted to share some other stories because you've probably heard Joanne's and mine in the past, maybe. Renee, my daughter, diagnosed with stage 4 kidney cancer at age 3. Her cancer metastasized to several other organs by the time we found it. We can't afford home water, filtration systems. We can't afford bottled water. How can we get help? You know, should we get blood tested? Nick, my son, was diagnosed with a cancerous brain tumor. We want to get our blood tested and our water tested, but we can't afford it. When is someone going to help us? Jessica, a few years ago, my direct neighbor at age 11 was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and the other next door neighbor at age 40 was diagnosed with breast cancer. How can we get help? And the last story I'll share is Brendan, my father, my mother, my brother, my son, my 2 aunts and uncle, all diagnosed with cancer. We all lived in Warminster drinking contaminated water from the same well. My son now is 12 and the only survivor. I know it was the water and we need answers. So those are just, I mean, we've gotten hundreds of stories. And today, what I know, and working on this for the past 8 years and being aware and trying to learn all that we can, is that we need laws from our state. Our state is behind the times. So it's really important that this rulemaking happen. And in order for it to happen, we need to use our voices. You know, Joanne mentioned it too. You know, so many of us have been impacted by, you know, jobs and financial difficulties, emotional illness, any illness, cancer, autoimmune disease. But the biggest thing for me is time and worry, because we spend so much time in worrying and working to stay healthy when in fact we're being poisoned by our own water. So please take the time out to call in and sign up to make your comments. You can also email comments, as Tracy said, and she's going to be sending you the link. You don't have to be a scientist to do this. I'm a mom and a sister and a daughter and just an advocate who have learned along the way. So in order for these laws to happen, which I've found working with Joanne and working in all this PFAS stuff, is that, you know, we have to, as a community, speak up, talk, and use our voice and tell them, no, stop, no more, because we're the ones paying for it in so many ways. You know, we are paying for our water and we're paying to get sick. So if we don't start speaking up, we can't promote change. So I would hope that you could all use your voices and try to sign up by Friday to make a comment. So thank you so much for joining tonight.
Thank you, Hope, and thank you, Joanne. I didn't do a proper introduction, but I do want to say that Hope, as you heard, is an affected community member, a resident of the area around the military bases there. And she's also a member of the leadership team of the National PFAS Contamination Coalition. And her tag is contaminated without consent. I think that kind of says it all. And also I want to say for Joanne, she also, as you know, as I mentioned, she's the co-founder of the organization, Buxmont Coalition, for Safer Water. And she grew up, as you heard, in Warminster. She's and is involved with the national movement as well. But she also is an author, and she wrote a really great book called Behind Closed Doors, Uncovering the Practices Harming Our Children's Health and What You Can Do About It. And it's a really moving book, and maybe she can tell us if it's available on Amazon or something now, but I just wanted to give them a little better introduction than I was able to before, so you all know who our special guests are here tonight. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to sharing my screen. And we're going to have questions and answers, as I said, at the end. And we'll be able, as soon as I'm done with these, and we'll be able to have questions for Joanne and Hope as well, who are going to, stick around. So that's great. So we're going to walk through the regulations, and I'm going to try to do it a little quickly, and then you can ask questions if you want me to go into a little more detail. But basically, we're recommending some changes. And these 5 points are sort of summarizing what those are. We want more protective standards than what they're proposing. That means more stricter maximum contaminant levels. We want equal protection for everybody because not all water drinkers are included in the rulemaking. We want rapid implementation because they're slow walking this whole thing through a bureaucratic process. And we want monitoring needs to be rigorous and ongoing because there's a lot of loopholes there. And finally, we want more PFAS compounds that to have MCLs made for them because there are others that have been found in our water that are not being addressed by this rulemaking. So what does the rule say and what is our proposal? So I'm sorry for this heavy text. I try not to do this, but I'm putting it up just because we do have to cover the basics. So they're saying 14 parts per trillion for PFOA, 18 parts per trillion for PFOS. Our proposal is for PFOA and PFOS to be stricter. The PFOA MCL should be 1 parts per trillion and not to exceed 6. And the PFOS should be no greater than 5 parts per trillion. We're basing this on a toxicological report that was done by an independent toxicological firm, Cambridge Environmental Associates, that Delaware Riverkeeper Network commissioned to analyze the issue. So when PFOA and PFOS are both found combined in water supplies, they should be no higher than 13 parts per trillion. There is no standard like that in this rulemaking. They don't talk about a combined concentration. And really the reason for this is because PFOA and PFOS are linked to developmental effects. So if they really need to be removed to as low a level as possible in order to protect the fetus, the infant, the young child, who are the most vulnerable. And if we don't do that, then we are sacrificing our most vulnerable population and not giving them the protection that they need. So the study done by Cambridge Environmental Associates uses information, studies that would be protective of the youngest of our population, the fetus, the infant, and young children. And the 1 to 6 depends on how you actually do the concentrations. We're going to be getting down at the bottom are the links to those, but you're going to be getting this in a follow-up email as well. And you can delve into that if you'd like to. So we believe that everybody has a right to clean water. And public water systems are only being included in the rulemaking. So that excludes private water wells. And that the rulemaking leaves somewhere between 1/3 and 1/4 of Pennsylvanians out of this rulemaking program. And our position is that it should be amended to include all private water users. As we know, the PFAS doesn't pick and choose what wells it's going to go to. It travels through the groundwater. So it moves into individual water wells as well as municipal wells, as well as surface water. And there's no protection if you're not testing. So you need to include those individual water wells in order to get them monitored and find out if you have it in your water, and then to require that it be removed. The water users who are using private water wells are not going to even know if they're drinking contaminated water because they're not even going to get tested. And that is really an outrage, because there are so many people that are dependent on private water wells, also springs and other types of water sources that are not included in public systems. And just a note here that in a PFAS, what's called the PEAT study, a pilot health study that was done in Buxmont, Montgomery County, of people around Hope and Joanne who were exposed to this contaminated water for decades, they found that the levels of PFAS in the blood of the people on private water supplies were actually a little higher than those on public water supplies. So that's evidence for you right there. All Pennsylvanians have the right to safe, clean water. So the EQB proposal, the next item is how they're going to be phasing it in, when they're going to start the program. So large systems in January 2024, and then the initial monitoring for smaller systems 2025. So that's another 2 and 3 years before we will get verified safe drinking water from our taps. That's totally unacceptable. And we believe this is inexcusably slow, and they should implement the compliance monitoring for MCLs right away. There's no reason to hold it up. There are systems in Pennsylvania already, particularly around where Hope and Joanne live, that are using technology that removes PFOA and PFOS from drinking water. This is not, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's already being used in Pennsylvania, these systems. And EPA has approved the lab testing methods. There's no reason to hold up on the testing. Everyone knows how to do it. There are labs in Pennsylvania that are certified to do this. And also, there are companies that want to get in on selling and installing these treatment systems. New Jersey has had MCLs in place for several years now, and it's a whole industry that has grown up around supplying these treatment systems. So it's not that the technology doesn't exist or is not handy. It's right there. So, the health effects of PFOA and PFOS are documented. We know how to test for it. We know the technology is there. It is most important to stop the exposure. And the only way you can do that is by adopting an MCL to mandate its removal. So we really feel there's no more delay. It's been too long already. It took us years to get here. We had to fight to get here. And the need for clean water is absolutely urgent. So the next item in the proposal is that the customers of the smaller systems are going to have to wait another year to find out what the results are after the public water system. So this is in addition to what we just talked about. Also, there's different frequencies of sampling. So the EQB has a whole suite, and I can go through it if you want, but it's kind of tedious. The best thing to do is to look at the link I put in the chat, because you can go and read it. But if we have Q&A on, questions on it, I'll be able to explain it. But we believe that all systems should be included in the rulemaking at the same time, and that should be immediately. No waivers should be allowed. They are saying that if you have not found PFAS in your water, then you could, a municipal system or a private water system that serves the public, some of them are private companies, would be able to get a waiver to have to, in other words, get out of doing the testing. We don't believe in waivers. Most states who have adopted, there are 9 states that have adopted various levels of protection, and most states do not give waivers, some do. Regarding the frequency, we believe that the sampling should be required annually for all systems. But if you have detections, then you have to sample more frequently. And that is sort of common sense, but they're giving an out, I think, in order, somehow they think it's, giving a break to the water companies, but it isn't. What it's doing is it's masking the presence of PFAS. And we already, again, as you know, we already have waited a long time for this. So ongoing and robust monitoring without these loopholes and waivers is really important. So the next thing is more MCLs. So when they tested the water statewide in Pennsylvania, they picked randomly certain places, but they also picked it around what they suspected would be points of contamination. And you can see that map by going to the DEP. Just if you want to Google it, it'll be DEP Pennsylvania DEP PFAS, and you'll see there's maps there. They show where they've sampled and where the points of contamination were suspected to be. But we believe that MCL should be proposed for more of the PFAS compounds than just these two, at least including all the 8 PFAS compounds that they found, because they did find more that have health effects than they're addressing in this rulemaking. And also there was a report that was done by the Drexel PFAS group, and they were engaged as an independent outside academic resource in order to do the study for Pennsylvania on the recommended MCLs. And they included in their analysis PFAS compounds that are not included in this rulemaking too. That included PFNA, PFHXS, PFHPA, PFBS, and Gen X, which is a replacement for PFOA. So we know at least they should include those because they already have all the studies on them. But also they should include the ones that they're not addressing that we know is in the water. DEP is using the excuse that there's not enough data, but that is not a credible excuse. There needs to be more sampling. We agree with that. But these are compounds that have actually been verified to be in some of the drinking water that was sampled. So we think they should be included. So here again is, how do I get involved? How do I speak up? So we have the virtual hearings coming up. As you can see, there's one each day next week, and they're at various times. 1 o'clock, there's only one in the evening, unfortunately, at 6 o'clock. And then there's another one at 1 o'clock on Wednesday. Then there's 2 9 o'clock ones. There's no end times for these. So we think that if you want to speak, and you need to sign up by Friday at 5 p.m. I already put the link into the chat, but go there and sign up right away, or just Google Environmental Quality Board and it'll come up, and sign up and pick a day that's convenient for you. And just know that you should be there at the very beginning, because probably the way they'll run it is they'll have people who have signed up ahead. And then once they go through that list, they're just going to close down the hearing. So don't expect that you could join, an hour later and it would still be going on. We don't know how many people have signed up. The written public comment period is very important because, sometimes it's difficult for people to take the time to speak up at a hearing, even though it actually is, frankly, it's the easiest way, because, you can say whatever you want. You have 5 minutes, but you can do it in 30 seconds or 1 minute or 3 minutes. There is a limit of 5 minutes, but you can speak from, as Joanne said, you speak from your own perspective, what you think and why you want to be protected and have safe water for yourself and your family. And if you want to give technical evidence, that's fine too. But the point is that you also, if you can't attend a virtual hearing, you can submit something in writing. And we want a lot of comments on the record. We are going to need to fight for this. And I think, they're in today's anti-regulation world, we should expect that we might not have a lot. We might have some naysayers who just don't want more regulation. So at this time, we're going to go to questions. And what I'd like you to do is write your question into the chat. I'm going to stop screen sharing here, although I'm going to come back in a minute because we have some resources on the screen. But if you could right now, and I should have said this earlier, please go through and pick out any questions that popped in your mind and write them in the chat. And we will be able to ask them, of Joanne and Hope or myself, and we'll do the best we can to answer. So I see one question there. It says, DEP says that written comments are treated the same as oral comments. I do think that's true. The reason is because they're required to do that. The public rulemaking system requires them to have hearings that are treated this. If they have a hearing, they have to treat it the same as written. I think written comments, because they're longer and you can submit technical reports or something like that, can be more substantive than what you could say in a 5-minute period, but it doesn't mean what you say in a 5-minute period isn't just as important. And they have to treat them that way. Okay, another question is, can you recommend accredited labs that do PFOA and PFOS testing? I know Hope and Joanne are involved with testing. Do you know some local labs that you want to recommend?
Yeah, there's two, right, Hope? Eurofins
And analytics.
Analytics, yeah.
Analytics, and then there's some online now that are a little bit cheaper. I think one's called, well, we can give that information to you, Tracy. We just ordered a kit for our local township that was pretty reasonable that tests PFAS. So there are different companies now. There's more and more of them. So I'm happy to give the list to Tracy so she can send it to y'all.
Yeah,
And Eurofins is EUROFINS.
they're in Horsham.
Horsham. They've been around a long time. There may be some in other parts of the state as well. They're a pretty big firm.
Just so that everybody knows, when you test for PFAS, you just can't go fill up a water bottle and bring it and say, hey, add PFAS to my test. It's a special test, and you actually have to get a special container that does not have PFAS in it, because many plastic containers may contain it. You get a special container that you have to use and follow the directions to do your collection. So I know people have said, I think I had my water tested. I'm sure it had PFAS. It probably didn't, because it's expensive. It's over $100 to have it done, but it's well worth it to know if you're being exposed. And our National Coalition for Safer Water also has a tab that has the phone numbers of both of those testing places as well.
I have the link to Buxmont Coalition in the slideshow here, and I'm going to put it into the chat. There's some good resources there. Also, Delaware Riverkeeper Network's website has some information as well. We had a couple questions that we got earlier. One of them is, what should I say at the hearings? I'm not an expert. So Hope or Joanne, you want to address that?
I'll just say, so I've done it myself, and basically I write out a sentence or two of what I want, or three, because usually you get like 3 minutes, or you get a certain amount of time, but I write it up beforehand, and then you just read it. That's pretty much it. So you can take the points that I know Tracy's going to email a bunch of pre-made sentences you could read, or if there's something that you want to talk about and add to her stuff, like I think it's really easy. And you read it and you're done. They call on the next person. So it gets recorded and also put down on the paper that so-and-so came and made a comment. So I think it's not as hard as you think. It doesn't have to be a paragraph. It can be 30 seconds if that's what you want. Whatever you want to say, it's pretty simple.
And I wouldn't worry about being too technical. I also think that there's going to be people and scientists that get on. Tracy's going to go on and be very scientific with what she says, because we need people who do that. But we also need personal stories, because Hope and I have testified, we've lobbied, we've talked to congressmen, we've talked to people high up at the DOD, and they said what really gets to them is hearing personal stories and hearing how people are personally affected by PFAS. That gets to them, because we're all human, right? We're all moms, we're all dads, we're all uncles, brothers, sisters, aunts. And when it gets personal, they remember those things. So.
That's great. Great, I have another question here. Can I get my blood tested for PFAS by my doctor? Maybe one of you can answer that as well.
So right now, I think they can write a prescription, but I'm not sure how good it is. So there's deficiencies in it, although it's changing. So Eurofins is one of them. If you Google them online, they don't only test water now, they actually test blood. It's a finger prick, and it just came on the market. It's not that expensive. because if you went to your doctor, got the prescription, it was costing people close to $800 because insurance doesn't cover it, which is pathetic. So I would encourage you to look into that Eurofins. I've been on their webinars about it, and our national leadership is pretty impressed with it right now. And it's the most reasonably priced one out there. Now, they're doing a health study in Horsham, Warrington, Warwick, and Warminster right now. So if it's bigger than that. So I can put the information in the website about this health study that's happening around the bases. They're doing that blood study for free. And they're also doing some children testing. Joanne, did you want to add to that?
No, I just want to make sure that you mentioned that if you do live in the area around both of those bases in Bucks County, that you should definitely sign up because it's free. It's a free way. And actually you also get a gift card as well. So.
Yeah, so that multi-site study is being done in different places across the United States. So it's a very special blood study, and they still need subjects, right?
Yes, we do. Hundreds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you live in that, is it just Bucks and Montgomery County? Is that the area? Or only certain townships?
It's a hazy thing. It goes a certain, it's figured out by water distribution they were trying to have, it's historical modeling. It's quite complicated, but if you live in the vicinity of Warrington, Northampton, Warminster, Warwick, Horsham, is it even Abington or parts of Abington? Upper Dublin, you just call this 1-800 this number, and they will tell you if you qualify for the health study.
Yeah, I'll put the number, the 1-800 number, so you can just call. If you even think you're on the edge of it, you call. They tell you yes or no. You give them information, and it's a 1-800 number. You can call anytime between 9 and 5. So I would encourage you, if you think you might be, so even if you moved away, so say there's certain dates you had to live in this certain area. I think it was 2003 or 3 to 2017. So that's also an indication. So even though you might not live there now and you did live there, then you qualify for this. So again, I'll put the 1-800 number. I just put the website, so you can go on the website and check it out and look through it. It might show a map, but it also has a 1-800 number. So I'd encourage you to check that out.
That's great, thank you. So we have another question here. Do you think protective standards on drinking waters are enough, or do we also need to remove PFAS further upstream, example, manufacturing? Absolutely, drinking water standards are not enough. We're only addressing the drinking water standards because that's the proposed rulemaking that's open, and it's a specific rulemaking under the Pennsylvania Safe Drinking Water Act. So that's why we're addressing that here tonight. But the other side of the coin to address PFAS contamination is to stop the discharges and the movement of pollution plumes from the sources, and then also from those diffuse sources that I talked about. Like, for instance, we believe that they should ban the application of biosolids until they can prove PFAS is not in the sewage sludge that they're spreading all over the agricultural areas. There are horror stories of farms that have had to, dairy farms that have had to put down their cows, crop fields that have been contaminated. They found short chain PFAS compounds in celery and tomatoes, even on fields that had this sewage sludge, so-called biosolids, spread on it years before the sampling was done of the crops. So this is the kind of spreading that we believe needs further attention and actual, regulation. Tonight, like I said, we're talking about the drinking water standards because this is the most urgent thing. The most urgent thing is to get it out of our water, but we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. The state should also be moving forward with the cleanups. Now, it's a whole nother webinar and we can talk about it. We've had webinars on how to clean it up and what's going on, for instance, around the military bases. And there's, a lot of information and stories on that. But thanks for asking the question. Because it absolutely is essential that we stop the spread and we stop the sources of contamination. We at Delaware Riverkeeper Network believe that they really should ban the use of all PFAS until this problem has been abated, because it really has turned into the scourge of environmental contamination, causing environmentally rooted health effects that are devastating. So there was another question that somebody sent in. I thought PFAS were outlawed. How come we still have a problem? So I'll just try to answer that, and then maybe Joanne or Hope want to add to it. But there was a voluntary program that EPA ran. It was called the 2010-2015 Stewardship Program. And the 8 major manufacturers that used PFAS compounds in their processes agreed voluntarily to phase out first the emissions by 2010 of all PFAS compounds, and then by 2015, the use of those compounds in manufacturing. But it didn't cover all PFAS compounds. The latest number from EPA is 12,000 PFAS compounds. Now, not all of them have health effects, but there's thousands and thousands that do. The major ones that we've been talking about that are most prevalent and that are persistent, bioaccumulative, waterborne, and highly toxic, those are sort of the markers for it. Those are in the hundreds. And there are replacement compounds for the bad ones that they're called long carbon chain compounds that they were phasing out. And some of the replacement compounds are just as toxic. So we have a big problem in this stewardship program. And even though certain PFAS compounds that are called long chain compounds, where you have the carbon and a fluorinated atom in a chain, some of those have been phased out, not all of them, by the major manufacturers, but it didn't cover overseas. We import products that have PFAS compounds in them. And there is still all of these replacements and other sorts of loopholes in the regulations that if you don't use a certain amount, for instance, then you can go ahead and keep using it. All sorts of loopholes in the federal regulations that are absolutely infuriating. The EPA has been nowhere on this. That's why Pennsylvania and the states that have taken action are in the situation we're in today, where we must adopt statewide standards because the federal government hasn't done anything. Now, the Biden administration has made a pledge, and certainly there has been more evidence of action from the Biden administration. So we're very hopeful for that. And I know that both Hope and Joanne are working at that national level, and hopefully that will move us forward towards a real phase out or complete stopping of PFAS compounds that are harmful to our health. Did either of you want to add anything on that?
No. Did you see Coffee's question? The first question that came in at 7:22.
There was one from
Q&A. Look in the Q&A. I think you're in the chat.
I did.
Oh, you did. Okay, good.
Yeah, I saw. That's where I got this question about them in the one before about the further upstream issue. But there's another one there now. Are there effective protections we can use on our homes? Yes, there are systems that you can install in homes. There are point of entry treatment systems, there are whole house systems. And do either of you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Well, basically, in order to remove PFAS, you have to make sure that your filtration system is either, they're called GACs, granular activated carbon filtration systems, or reverse osmosis. They're the only ones that we know that are proven to at least reduce the amount of PFAS in your drinking water. And as Tracy said, there's ones that are very inexpensive, maybe $150 that you can put right on your kitchen faucet sink. So just under the sink or at the sink. And then there's also ones that you can put that where the water comes into your home. They're more expensive, but it filters all of your water that you shower with, you brush your teeth with, you cook with. So yeah, absolutely. You should, because not only is it removing PFAS, but these methods are also filtering out hundreds of other unregulated chemicals you don't even know about. So it is the smartest thing you can possibly do to protect yourself and your family.
That's great, thank you. Yeah, I see Coffee has one here. Is it sufficient to filter PFAS during drinking water treatment? If so, how do we enforce discharge violations? It's sort of similar to the other question in that, well, yes, we have to filter it as it's going, for our drinking water. We must do that. But we believe, for instance, there should be surface water standards adopted by the state. Because if there were surface water standards, as well as discharge standards for discharges from manufacturers or other sorts of industrial or sewage treatment systems, then they would have to remove they would have to remove the PFAS from what's discharged to the waterway, which is, again, getting at that issue of trying to address the spread that is totally uncontrolled at this point in time of PFAS compounds further into the environment. So we do need to filter during drinking water. We must do that. But we also need to address upstream and address the sources of contamination. And that does require further regulatory action by the state and the federal government. And as far as enforcing discharge violations, right now there are no rules so there's no violations, unfortunately. And that would be handled by our Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, which a lot of people have a lot of confidence in, but at least that's their job and they should be out there doing it. Right now, we don't even have the standards to enforce discharge of PFAS into the environment. So I know we're at 7:59 right now. Boy, time flies. And I really, I'm really thrilled. We had a lot of great questions here tonight. And any last minute questions from anybody? What we can do is anything we missed, I will try to answer in the follow-up email. As I said, there's going to be a recording link sent to everybody who registered for tonight, even if people registered and were not able to attend, for instance. And we're going to put links to a lot of different resources, different studies, talking points that you can use to help you prepare for the virtual hearings and also help you to write your comments. I just want to put up one last minute here, if you bear with me, the resources, because I want to remind you, Friday, 5 p.m., please, if you can swing it, please, it would be really terrific if you could sign up to speak at the hearing. And, as Joanne said, you don't have to be an expert, but as Hope said, if possible, one thing you could do is, write it out and time it so you can feel comfortable when your name is called and your turn comes. And right here is the more information, these bunch of different links that I'm going to be sending you. Before we got off, I just couldn't go without saying, read Rob Bilot's book, Exposure. There was a movie called Dark Waters based on that starred Mark Ruffalo. You can get that on Netflix. And the book is absolutely riveting. It's a real page turner. I think I read it in one night. You just couldn't put it down. He's the man, the lawyer that started the entire PFAS movement early on. So the last thing I want to say is that we're all here tonight because we want to address this pollutant in our drinking water. And in order for us to get there, we have to realize this is our right. Clean, safe water is our constitutional right. We have an environmental amendment to the Pennsylvania Constitution that guarantees pure water. And that's why Delaware Riverkeeper Network sued the state of Pennsylvania in order to get this done. Because they were violating our Pennsylvania Constitution by not guaranteeing clean, safe water. So a network of Pennsylvania organizations are working together for the most protective PFAS MCLs for all people. And we ask you to lift your voice up at the hearing, send in a note, tell your neighbors about it, try to speak up, stand up for our clean, safe water so we know ourselves and our families can safely drink the water that comes out of our tap. So thank you all very much. Really great to see such a great crowd and so many questions here tonight. Joanne, Hope, any last goodbyes or anything?
No, thank you, everyone. Please try to speak up. Eric, I wanted to answer your question real quick. PADEP, the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, they have on their website some of the sampling, so you can go check it out, that they have to make that public. And somebody else had asked about around the bases. Yes, we do believe that they are, the military is one of the largest sources of PFAS contamination in our country, undoubtedly. That's all. Just answer your
Yeah,
question.
thanks everybody. We appreciate you all for showing up, and go sign up for your comments, please.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all. You'll get
Thank
the
you,
form in a minute,
Tracy.
probably
Yeah.
tomorrow. Thank you.